And welcome to another commentary. This week we have, not Stevray Bro. That's really funny because a lot of people tend to be like, Steven, you look like Steven from Steven Universe. And I do. In fact, I had a couple of people that like messaged me and it's like, Steven, did you start a Cartoon Network TV show without telling anyone? And I'm like, no. But anyways, this is Steven Universe and Star Butterfly from Star versus the Forces of Evil. Show that hasn't aired yet, but I saw the intro. They released it on YouTube, or at least it got leaked on YouTube, and it looks really, really good. We don't know what it's going to be like in terms of writing, but like I saw that the deaf girl from Weeds is actually voicing Star, and that's really cool. And it's just really neat to see her in something else. And then I saw these, and it's really cool because these seem like both shows seem to be really influenced by Sailor Moon. And it's really interesting is that the TV shows that I grew up with, the content creators now that's all making the TV shows for this generation were the ones that watched the same shows that I did. So they're inspired by the same stuff that inspired me. And so you see all this like Steven Universe is obviously Sailor Moon. And then you have Star versus the Forces of Evil, where she's this girl that's from a different dimension that gets punished and put on Earth for whatever reason, and she has a wand that looks very much like the Card Captor's wand. This was a guys. I think it was mostly aimed towards girls, but it was an anime about a girl who wore frilly dresses and I think captured monsters through cards. Capturing monsters was really popular. I didn't actually watch Card Captors, so I apologize if that's the worst description of the show ever. But that aired on I think WB the exact same time that what WB and Fox Kids had like a competition. Fox Kids had Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, Digimon, and then you had also like Fighting Foodons when it became the Fox Box. That was interesting, I guess. And then you have WB, which had Pokemon. They had the let's see here. They had Pokemon. They had Card Captors. They had Jackie Chan Adventures. Ah man, Jackie Chan Adventures. Anyways, let's actually talk about the piece at hand. So I'm drawing Star and Steven eating cookie cats. That's what they're supposed to be. They already kind of bit off the ears, so there's no real indication. As you can see here, I kept toying around with what her pose would be because I wanted to both be dynamically cartoony, but also not really crazy. And one of some of her character models I've seen on the show is that it's actually really popular with cartoons right now. With Wander Over Yonder, is that whenever they have their arms, they tend to make parallel lines from the forearms. So if one character's looking have one arm up and one arm down, the line for the arm would actually connect from the beginning of one elbow to the other, and then they erase it for the body. But that's what it looks like. I have to admit, the Steven in this picture is kind of adorable. I went off model a little bit. For the most part, this is very much a Steven Universe drawing, but I decided to just take it a little bit step further, add a little extra details they wouldn't necessarily put in the show itself, like folds, and so on the shirt and things. And I decided to show his belly button just a little bit. I don't know if it's just because it makes him chubbier looking, and that's adorable. By the way, if you ever want to make something adorable, make it chubby. That's just how it works, at least in cartoons. I don't think I'm necessarily that adorable, and I'm pretty chubby. With Star, I was kind of worried about the face. She makes a lot of really unique facial expressions within the intro, which is insane because it's only 45 seconds, 50 seconds long, and she's very, very expressive, which is really cool. And so I wanted to give her that kind of goofy face that she always has in the cartoon intro. But at the exact same time, since no one's really seen Star before, I knew that most people were clicking on this because they know Steven, they know Universe, and so this new character, it's definitely getting a following on Tumblr. That's where I found the intro, and it's obviously getting it's got a subreddit now, things like that. So it's growing a fan base. Which, by the way, if you want to make a cartoon, you should, and this is basing off of most of the modern day cartoons right now and Cartoon Hangover, but if you want to do a cartoon, you should start promoting it before you release the actual pilot. Say you're okay, I'm going to make a pilot for a cartoon, a 3-4 minute long, animation on YouTube, and you want to promote it. Well, before you do that, start releasing the characters, production art, before you release the actual final, your product. Because if you could build hype that's when that first product is, or that first video is going to do really, really well. Now, if you just like hold off and don't show anything because you're worried about spoiling stuff and then you release it, it might not get as high views as it would have if you already had people excited about it, already jumping in, especially how YouTube works. For the most part, in the first like 24 hours, if you don't get so many views, it's not going to get like put on that hype train and, you know, like get put on the certain sections. Obviously, there's different things where like if a big YouTuber sees it and they funnel through views and it just like it all comes together later on. And I've had plenty of videos that like someone stumbled upon it, shared it, and then it grew really big. But like within the internal of YouTube, you definitely want to get like as many views as you possibly can within like 4 days of posting it, but really within the first 24 hours. And that's when, you know, it's got enough views, it's got enough retention rates, and it's now at this point where it's going to start popping up on people's sides. And so, and just in general, it makes more sense to always have some people get excited about your pilot. And then, you know, then people, that way, you know, if you build it, they will come. The coloring job here, I was debating on whether or not to make it really, really simple. By the way, the background style is strictly Steven Universe. I looked at the samples that I pulled from to kind of get the style down, and I wound up just kind of copying it, really. Is in the scene of Steven Universe's intro, where all 4 characters are running and Steven runs past the crystal gems. That's basically what they're sitting on right now. I wanted to put them in somewhere magical, because like both characters, the reason why I combined them is because, well, Steven Universe is about, you know, these crystal gems, these people trying to save the day, and, you know, there's definitely this magic vibe coming from, or mythical. And then you have Star versus Universe, or Star versus the Forces of Universe, Forces of Evil. I'm just gonna call her Star. So you have Star over here, who's kind of very similar. She, you know, she's also fighting evil, and she also has magic powers. And like I said, they do both remind me a lot of Sailor Moon, which is totally cool. Though I think Steven Universe might have it definitely has Sailor Moon aspects to it, but it also has some Dragon Ball aspects, and you can really tell from their intro and outros where like they're very anime inspired storylines. And I talk more about this in the most recent podcast that hasn't been put up yet. I'm busy. In fact, I probably shouldn't be doing this one, but I do promise you guys commentaries. So with the backgrounds, basically what I wound up doing is just drawing a straight line with a regular tool, and then taking the chunky chalk brush as a eraser and just kind of jabbing it so it has that kind of chalky look to it, which a lot of Steven backgrounds do have. And then the colors I just sampled directly from the intro, so I just kind of screen capped it, took the colors, and plopped them in here. Let's see here. I did decide to later on add coloring or shading to the characters and a little bit of the background for the foreground. And the reason why I did that was because I thought, okay, this looks good, but I feel like it needs a little bit more to make it pop. I mean, this isn't an animation. This is just one picture, you know, so I might as well do something a little special with it. So, aside from making clouds, by the way, which again are very much from it, I filled it in with a regular brush and then took a texture brush like Chunky Chalk, or I have a few like just painted textures and just went over the edges to give it that look and then blurred it a little bit. But for the shading here, what I did was I took kind of this purplish pink and I made a layer above the colored layers. And which I think I also, okay, so you can see here, there's a little bit of the dancing lines and the marching ants is what some people call them, a marquee. What I did was I right-clicked the actual colors and then selected pixels, so that way I don't color over it and, you know, ruin the rest of the background. And so it's a multiply layer above it. I think maybe a little lower. And I think it's 100% multiply. And then I'm just taking this pinkish tone, which seemed to be interacting with all the colors of the thing pretty well. Like sometimes when you do this technique, when you're shading all of it with just one color, which saves a lot of time because you don't have to change colors. It doesn't always work out, but for the most part, this pinkish tone that I use just is interacting with all the colors and making them all look really, really nice, which is pretty sweet. And I think this just gave it a little bit more of a pop than before. Though I do have to admit, I think Steven's coloring or shading is a little bit better. And though you can see on his right side leg, looking back at it, I really regret having that dark line there. It makes no sense. In my head it did, but it does not in the final piece. I probably should edit that, but I probably forgot. After finishing the shading here, what I wound up doing is taking the Chunky Chalk brush again to put little chocolate stains on their mouths. since I imagine both of them being kind of messy eaters. And then I took the color layer, put it above it, blurred it, and then just try to do some overlays and lower the opacity just to give it that little, like, you know, more polished look. Hope you guys enjoyed this commentary, and I will see you guys again later this week.